Hey folks, here, welcome back to another Pokemon Masters video, and today we're going to go over some sync pairs that you should probably prioritize over others to level up first, because, well, apparently a lot of people have been asking me lately, and it's also probably due to the fact that the training events are up, the Solgaleo events are up. It's a really great time to grind for a lot of these materials to level up or level cap a lot of your sync pairs, so let's go over them. So, first of all, from the perspective, if you just started the game recently, it's actually the hardest part is just to level up your first max level sync pair. Once you get your first one, it just gets much easier, right? And honestly, your first one doesn't even need to be like max level. It doesn't have to be 120. It could be 100. Assuming it's a 5-star, right? It's 95 for a 4-star and 90 for 3 stars. You don't need to have it at absolute max. Even at 100, you should, it should probably be enough to start working on some more, right? So for your first one to max out, it could honestly be whatever, but the strategy I would probably go for is a striker plus a support, because again, you're mostly you have to farm a lot of the level up manuals and in the level up courses, right? So you need a support to tank hits, and then while they tank hits, your striker does damage, right? So for the supports that you probably want to use to tank hits, Phoebe is a good one. Rosa is a good one. Rosanta is nice. Roxanne is a good option. Lunatone's a good option. Hilbert's a good option. Skyla's okay. Skyla's okay, I guess. And Torchic, these are all good options, right? Maybe not Arcanine, maybe not Arcanine and Skyla, just because they tank, but they also don't really give you anything much in offensive capability except for speed, which is still nice, but speed shouldn't be that relevant at this stage yet. So you pick one of these supports, and then you go with a striker, right? So striker, if you're starting out, you're trying to get your first one, it really doesn't matter if you're mainly doing it in single player. Obviously, with the training event up right now, you should probably go with someone that fits one of those types. But if there isn't any training events up at the moment, and you just have to do the training courses, then honestly, anything. Well, I wouldn't say anything would be fine. A lot of these would be fine, right? So stuff like Chris, although I probably wouldn't really recommend Chris for your first one, but Chris isn't a terrible option. Stuff like Brendan, Olivia, even though they're really good in co-op, they're also pretty decent in single player as well. Lance is a really good one for single player. Garchomp's really good for single player. Houndoom, even though Houndoom's pretty bad in co-op, but Houndoom's really good in single player, right? If you're just looking to try level up, folks, you need your first sync pair. You need your first max level or 100 to get everyone else going, right? So Houndoom's a decent option as well. If you got Mewtwo, then go with that. If you don't, then never mind. Solgaleo's okay. Alyssa's a good option as well. Blue, again, even a lot of these sync pairs who do AoE damage, who are not as good in co-op because of AoE, they should be really good in single player. AoE are good in single player. Hilda, if you don't have anything else, Norman's a good choice, right? Norman helps a lot with a lot of these training events. Norman and then Nolan as well. These are also really good choices. Maybe Roserade, but I'd probably suggest Norman or Nolan before Roserade. But yeah, again, a lot of these strikers are good choices. Some strikers that you probably don't want to choose is something like Mudsdale or Krandos or Bugsy, maybe even. Avalog, I probably wouldn't go with that. Machamp is very unreliable. Toucannon, wouldn't go with that either. Keldor, Haxorus, maybe not Infernape, again, just not reliable enough. Or Chantel, maybe. Alolan Raichu is an okay choice as well, right? Does have that AoE. So there's that. So for the first one, it doesn't really matter, but after that, there would be priorities, right? And here's, I guess, the main topic of the video, right? Once you get your first one, and you could start grinding a lot of these stuff much easier. Your number one priority should be leveling up Olivia if you have Olivia. The main reason being is Olivia is basically usable in every event co-op ever. Like, you know, she's decent for every event co-op. She's usable in them, and more importantly, well, it's actually, I think that's more important, but Olivia actually also is really useful in a lot of these EX co-ops if you're trying to grind gear, right? You can use Olivia in Price, you can use Olivia in Skyla, you can use Olivia in Erica, Rosa, right? Like, you could use Olivia in a lot of these challenges, so she's probably your number one priority just because of how widely used she is, right? And your number two priority would maybe be Trico, because Trico also fits a lot of those, a lot of the boxes that Olivia fits as well. Trico does well in so many of the event quests, and also does well in 2 of the EX co-ops, right? Mainly Barry and Brock, which, you know, if you're trying to go grind gear, which you should, you know, those 2 are decent ones to go for. Brock, you should just go for clear, but Barry, you should do Barry to grind. Barry's just easier to grind. And after those two, and if you don't have those 2, I guess it just becomes a bit more broader, right? Again, we're talking about some end game content here, right? Which is basically co-op gear grinding, which is, you know, if you got sync pairs strong enough to beat the EX challenges, you got sync pairs strong enough to beat anything in the game. So, some other decent ones that you probably want to go with, Hilda, you could easily, if you have Hilda Max, you could easily auto solo EX very hard Erica, right? There's that as well. Totodile, you could do you could do Flannery, although, you know, Flannery is a bit more difficult. You need a bit more setup for that one. Another decent option, Nolan would be a decent option. There's a few that you could also solo with, stuff like Erica, right? Blue, you could do EX Rosa with, right? So there's that. If you don't have Trico, Roserade's a decent replacement, so that's another option that you could go with. Although I probably wouldn't go for Roserade first. I'd maybe put Roserade slightly down the ladder after these. Lance is another one to upgrade him, though, again, Lance, again, you would need Olivia and Brendan and Mewtwo as well if you have Mewtwo. But, you know, I doubt if you're watching this video you have Mewtwo or have the abilities max out Mewtwo. But Brendan and Olivia are your main ones that you're looking to use just to, like, blow through every event that doesn't really need specific units, right? But after that, you're just looking at specific units to clear certain EX challenges, right? Garchomp, if you want to clear EX Hau, right? EX very hard Hau, you can use Garchomp. And Alyssa for Price, even though you could use Olivia for that as well. But, you know, Alyssa's a decent backup for that as well. Who else? Let me see. Price, Noland. That's basically most of it. Lucario as well. That would also Lucario would also help in Erica, right? Although if you have Hilda, you don't have to worry too much about it. If you don't have Hilda, then Arcanine, Infernape, Lucario, you would all use those. So those are basically the strikers, which are the materials that you could farm from the Solgaleo event, right? But some supports would be really nice as well. Phoebe being the big one here. Again, we're just talking about co-op. There are some other sync pairs that are useful in co-op. Torchic and Delibird, these are pretty useful. Rosa as well. These 3, you see a lot of general use in a lot of the co-op stages. Nosepass is another one. And Arcanine is useful in both EX Erica and EX Barry, if you want to, you know, level that one. Although, again, you don't have to worry too much about leveling it up because you're basically in here just to use We're Standing Strong, so you don't get status because in EX Erica, you could get Poison, and EX Barry, you could get Slept, right? So you're basically only in there to use that. But, you know, so I wouldn't say it's that much of a priority, but it's really useful, obviously, right? Hilbert's a decent one to use as well, although you don't see too much Hilbert action in co-op, which is a shame because Hilbert, Hilbert does really decent, and it should do really decent in a lot of those stages. And then after that, maybe Lyra, Skyla, then, these are stuff after you get these guys, right? Meditite, Lunatone. I wouldn't worry about these if you haven't got, like, these guys maxed out yet, right? So, those are for some supports. As for, let's get back to strikers again. So after you maxed out Olivia and Brendan, then all the other ones I mentioned, like Hilda, Chris, Noland, Alyssa, who else? Lance, Garchomp. Once you got those folks maxed out, Blue, right? And then maybe you want to move down to some other replacements, right? Or decent units that you could throw in there. Lucar's one, as I've said before. Machamp is okay. Roserade's a good one, right? To replace Brendan / Trico. If you don't have Brendan and Trico, you probably want to level up Roserade instead. So those are some decent options. But aside from those, there really aren't any priorities. Like, all this other stuff, like Noland, is nice to level up, to use, right? That's, I guess, not Noland, Norman. And then aside from that, everything else is just not too much of a priority. Maybe Reuniclus, maybe Houndoom, just because they're 5 stars, but they don't have too much uses. I guess you could use Reuniclus as a substitute for Mewtwo versus the X Marshall if you don't have Mewtwo, I guess. So there's that. Maybe Claire if you don't have Lance for EX Claire, right? But aside from that, none of these are really priorities. Moving on to some tech units that you probably want to level up. Honestly, none of these tech units are really a priority, aside from Xatu, which Will and Xatu is really, really good for helping other sync pairs to level up. That's something I forgot to mention as one of your first sync pairs that you could use to level up. Just make sure you don't unlock Air Slash, so the AI doesn't go to Air Slash, right? AI just uses Sword Powered, and it's really, really good for farming level ups, right? But aside from Will and Xatu, nothing really is honestly a priority for tech sync pairs. Winona is useful for EX Flannery. Acerola is useful if you're using it with Garchomp sometimes. Floatzel is useful for Flannery. That's about it, I guess. Who else? I guess there are some stages where you can use Crobat, where Crobat would be helpful. Gengar maybe against EX Skyla, I think it was, right? Skyla, if you don't have Mewtwo, might be useful there. And that's kind of about it for the tech sync pairs. Again, I wouldn't really prioritize any of these tech sync pairs except for Will and Xatu, right? None of these are really that big of a deal. Again, these are extremely situational, right? If the Mewtwo event comes back, then, maybe Bryson and Grimsley, but otherwise, probably not. At the moment, you can use Torkoal against Very Hard Solgaleo. Torkoal works very well in there, but you don't need its level to be really high. You're just there to Will-O-Wisp and then swap out. So there's that as well. But aside from that, none of these are really too, useful. None of these are a priority. So anyways, basically, quick recap. After you get your first, max level, you should go for first Olivia, then Brendan. And then if you go for Brendan, then Olivia, it doesn't matter, right? If you don't have Olivia, then obviously go for Brendan. But then after that, Hilda, Chris, a lot of these sync pairs that actually have uses in the X challenges, because a lot of people say gears aren't that useful. That's not really true, because there are certain stages where a 2-star pin really makes a difference. It's a difference between winning or losing, right? For certain sync pairs, right? So it's not completely useless. Again, it's not crazy stats, but it does help. And again, well, the ones that I just listed in this video are the ones that you probably should prioritize over others. So anyways, hopefully that was helpful. Let me know what you guys think in the comments down below. Like and enjoy this video, subscribe to the channel for some more Pokemon Masters content. I'll see you guys in the next one.